We, the citizens of America, are now joined in a great national effort to rebuild our country and restore its promise for all of our people. Because today, we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people.
Well, greetings, friends and fellow citizens, and welcome to the We the People Convention News and Opinion radio show and podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski, and I'm the host of this program, and I'm also the president of the We the People Convention. And this 5-station radio network and this radio program are brought to you and paid for by the donors to the We the People Convention. And if you would like to support that cause, we invite you to do so by going to wethepeopleconvention.org. For those who are not listening on the radio on the 5 stations that air the program on Saturday mornings in Ohio, you are listening or watching the show on our website at wethepeopleconvention.org, where you can click on the yellow button right there on the front of the web page, and you can see the player where you can watch the podcast on your phone, on your laptop, on your iPad, on your computer, any way you want. Matter of fact, on that page, you'll see a map of all the radio stations that carry the show between 7:30 a.m. and 9 a.m. on Saturday mornings. Plus, you'll see links to those radio stations so you can listen to the radio, not just over the radio, but on your phone or on your computer. You will also find on the podcast page links to how you can have the podcast play on your TV, on Roku TV and Amazon Fire TV. Plus, you can watch it on YouTube and you can listen to it on iTunes. So however you're getting the show, we're awful glad you decided to join us for this show, because we are just a few days out from the most important election in our lifetime. And, this is a lot of information you're going to need to help us win that election and have a very, very happy day on Tuesday, November 3rd. That's our goal. For those of you who have just tuned in for the first time, this program is really about all of us citizens protecting and defending our freedom and our liberty and our prosperity and our Constitution and the American way of life. And we have never been called upon to do that more so than we are today because of this very, very important election. So we're going to talk a lot about that in this show, and we're going to help you understand what you can do to help make sure that we do protect our freedom, liberty, prosperity, and our American way of life and Constitution. So let's just get right into it and go from there. The election, obviously coming up on November 3rd, for those of you who have not voted yet, there's still options available. But I want to make it clear that if you wanted to vote absentee ballot, and today is Saturday when you're hearing this program, so if you have an absentee ballot that you put forward, if you don't get it back, you're going to have to vote in person. So the way this works is if they don't receive your absentee ballot application by noon on Saturday, that's the day of this show, then they are not going to mail you a ballot. So you got to go to your Board of Elections and there's a link there that will say, check your ballot status. And so if you applied for an absentee ballot, you need to check there to see if one was mailed to you, because by Ohio law, you have to have that ballot in. So it's postmarked by Tuesday, November 3rd. And there's not a lot of time to turn that around. If you do get your absentee ballot in the mail on Saturday or Monday, fill it out, but take it to the Board of Elections and drop it in the box. Don't mail it. Don't take the chance. Make sure you drop it in the box, okay? So most people don't understand that the absentee voting now is coming to an end, and now you can still vote in person, and you can do that on Saturday and on Sunday. So that's pretty cool. Most states don't allow that. And you can, then do it obviously on Monday before the election and then on Tuesday, during the election. Now, I want to talk about how big Ohio's early voting has been. There's a chart I'm putting up on the screen for those of you who are watching the podcast, and I'll read it to you for those of you who are listening on the radio. In Ohio, as of this show being produced on Friday the 31st, the turnout so far, people are voting early, both absentee and by in-person voting. There's been 1,063,000 Democrats, 1,188,000 Republicans, and 326,753 independent voters, people who haven't identified their voter preference by party. Now, that's huge news, folks. That's huge news. And those of you who listen to this show, you're responsible for that, because the Republicans almost never have more votes in the early voting than the Democrats. We vote on election day. That's what we traditionally do. And 80% or more of the people who vote this election day are going to be conservative Republicans, Trump voters. So it's really important that right now there have been more Republicans voting than Democrats in the early voting, because that's going to be the first results. I've said this to you last week. The first results you're going to see on the night of the election, the first thing you'll see is all the absentee and early voting, because they'll be counting that first thing on election day morning. So then after they announce the early voting, statistics for Ohio, then a few hours later, they'll vote for the people who voted on election day. But it's going to be really quick this time, simply because there's so many people voting early. There's only going to be about 20% of the regular voters turning out at your precinct for you to vote. So it's going to go really fast if you want to vote on election day. Okay, it's going to go really fast. And so all of this is really caused by the fact that we've had this voter registration effort taking place around the state. And I told you last week that we went from 7.2 million people registered to vote in Ohio in 2016, and now we're up to 8 million. And a lot of those people are in our red counties, which President Trump won. And so there was a story that came out in the Toledo Blade that said early voting is surging in Ohio's red counties too, because mostly what you're hearing is about the early voting in Cleveland, Cincinnati, Columbus, Dayton, Toledo, those places. But it's just not true that those are the only places where early voting is taking place. And the numbers show that, right? I just showed you the numbers. But I want to make a couple things really clear to you, because there's been some people who are just worried about Mike DeWine in Ohio shutting down the elections, even in Pennsylvania and other states. Here's the bottom line. Secretary of State Frank LaRose assured voters this week that unlike the presidential primary, which was extended from March 17th to April 28th as the pandemic started, there can be no change in voting on this election day. There has been some folks wondering, will election day happen as scheduled? Of course it will, said LaRose. Election day is unchangeable. LaRose said Tuesday during Mike DeWine's coronavirus briefing, the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November is set in both state and federal law. It has been unchanged since 1843. You cannot contrast with the primary elections, which are routinely moved over the years. At the polls, voters are asked to wear masks. Any who show up without a mask are offered a mask to wear while they vote, but poll workers can't deny them the right to cast their ballots if they refuse. So not only is it going to be voting on election day, if you don't want to wear a mask, you don't have to. Okay? And the election is not going to be canceled. I am going to vote on election day, and I know lots of you are going to vote on election day. Okay? And part of the reason for that is, today the third quarter numbers came out, and they were just unbelievable. The gross domestic product, which is the economic activity of the United States, grew in the third quarter at 33.1%, the largest rate in history. Now, again, you got to take that with a grain of salt. The only reason you could grow that fast is if you had a pandemic where you destroyed the economy that fast, right? But nonetheless, this basically proves President Trump was right when he said all summer long that this is going to be a V-shaped recovery, okay? And it is. In other words, it went down fast and it's going to go up fast. So this is very encouraging. But I've said to you guys last week, and I mean it, things are looking really good, not just in Ohio, but around the country. But now we have to close the deal. okay? And it's important that you and I do everything we can now in these last few days to make sure we get every Trump vote out that we can get. Why? Because we don't just want to elect President Trump, we want to defeat the Democrat, socialist, communists at every step of the game. And so I've asked you to get slate cards. And if you go to wethepeopleconvention.org, right on the front page, it says vote early in person. Click here to get your slate card. Get your slate card. Get that to people who you know are going to vote, and make sure they vote down ticket for all Republicans, particularly the judges, particularly the Supreme Court judges, French and Kennedy, Judy French and Sharon Kennedy. Okay? Now, again, what can you do? Here's what you must do. You need to go out of your way and ask every person you know who supports Trump if they voted or not. Then you've got to make sure they pledge to you that they're going to go to vote, they're going to vote on election day, or they're going to vote before that this weekend. But we cannot let any vote, go unvoted. And again, I ask you, be like Donald Trump, fight for every vote. And if you do that, I promise you, we're all going to be very happy campers come election day. I promise you that. Just do what I'm asking you to do, and it'll make a big difference. Now, I also last week asked you guys to jump back in and help with the NRA. And I am so happy and so proud of you guys. I've asked you to help, and I talked to David Conti from the NRA this week. He told me he's getting phone calls. People are getting trained. They're signing up. If you want to help send text messages on election day, we need your help. Just take out your phone and text the letters P2P, which stands for peer-to-peer. The letter P, the number 2, the letter P. Send that to this phone number, 703-708-4664. 703-708-4664, and then you will get trained to send text messages on election day. Now, why is that important? Again, I said we must get out our vote. 80% or more of the people who vote on election day are us, are conservatives, who are traditionalists, who believe we all should vote on election day. So every vote we get, every person we get to go there is a vote towards our cause. Okay? So that's why you got to do that. And I appreciate those of you who have done that. I also, want you guys to keep doing the Trump train road rallies. We've had great success with that throughout the year. And Free Ohio Now, if you go to freeohionow.com, they've got, I think, 50 more events this week all over Ohio, this weekend, from the time you're hearing this show until Election Day. So look on their website at freeohionow.com and see if there's a Trump train or a sign wave, or anything in your area that you can help show your support for President Trump. I just read an article this week by Byron York in the Hill, where he said the Trump rallies, the huge Trump rallies, you don't see on TV. And it was an interview with people in Ohio and Pennsylvania who had this huge Trump train road rally on I-70, okay? And Byron York was just talking about that the media doesn't even understand what you guys are doing, how powerful what you've done is in this election. And I sent out, an email, and if you don't get my emails, go to wethepeopleconvention.org, right on the front page, put your email address and your phone number in there. I sent out an email that said, we don't need no stinking social media. And it's a great article by the Conservative Treehouse that talks about how our plan, the plan that you and I have executed for the last year, where we said we're not going to have social media access. The media is not going to let us do interviews. They're going to shut Donald Trump off or censor him on Twitter. All of those things happened. What are we going to do about it? And so what do? We built a 5-station radio network so we could talk directly to the public. We built this podcast and website. We started to do Trump train road rallies way back in June, and they took off. We started to do sine waves all summer long, all the way up to the election. We did the Barn Billboard program, an incredibly successful program with these giant billboards all over the interstates and all over Ohio that are getting millions of impressions. And in this article, we don't need no stinking social media. He basically says we are just kicking big tech and the establishment's butts. And we are doing that. We just got to close the deal now, right? You got to stay focused. You can't worry about DeWine's going to cancel the election. It's all hooey. Don't worry about it. We just got to do our job, and that is get out our vote, talk to everyone you know and get out their vote, volunteer for the NRA, okay? And we'll be all right. Now, I told you if you don't get my emails or the text messages that you should sign up. On election night, I will probably, I almost always will do a press release when we win Ohio. I'll make a press release about that. And then if it's not 3 o'clock in the morning like it was last time, I'll send out a press release when Trump wins the nation. If not, it'll be on the morning after the election. You'll see me probably do a video that I'll post for you, and I'll send out emails and text messages announcing that so you can get my take on where we are and where we go from there. We're going to talk about where we go from there after the election in this show because there's some really important things that we're going to be doing and you're going to be part of. Because this time, we're not just stopping. It's not like, yay, Trump won. Let's all go home and forget about it. Ain't happening, folks. We are going to be engaged like you've never seen before because we must be, because we must defeat the communist left that's trying to take over our country. And we're going to talk more about that when we come back from this break. So thanks for all you've done and all you're doing. You're doing a great job. Just close the deal and everything's going to be just fine on Election Day. I promise you that. You're listening to the We the People Convention News and Opinion radio show and podcast. And my name is Tom Zawistowski.
Buckeye Firearms Association is Ohio's #1 gun rights organization, protecting the rights of Ohio's 4 million gun owners. And you can get our weekly gun rights newsletter free. Receive breaking news and urgent alerts on gun laws. Stay up to date on self-defense and shooting sports. Discover pro-gun activities and events near you. Get your free gun rights newsletter now at bfanews.org. That's bfanews.org. bfanews.org.
The Buckeye Institute was founded in 1989, and we're the longest-serving free market think tank in the state of Ohio. My goal is removing barriers to prosperity that have been put in place by government. We want for Ohio to be the freest and most prosperous state in the country.
The Buckeye Institute is a source of common sense ideas that will have an impact on the nation as well as the state of Ohio.
All right, so that you've got your understanding of what we're doing in the election. So let's move on to some other things that are happening that are really important. Again, some of them relate to the election. So many of you saw Tucker Carlson had this Tony Bobulinski guy who was the CEO of the company that the Biden family was using to do these deals with China and Ukraine and all these other Russia and all this stuff. Very powerful video. But, so if you haven't watched the hour video, you should go online and watch it because it's really, there's just no doubt that Joe Biden was part of the deal, was making decisions about this, and they were basically selling influence. They were selling access to the Obama White House, and they are trying to get access, if Biden becomes president, for China and Russia and foreign governments. This is an amazing scandal. And so I'm just going to play this real short clip where Tucker Carlson tells Bobulinski to explain, how they thought they could get away with this. Listen to this.
And I'm thinking about the Biden family, like, how are they doing this? I know Joe decided not to run in 2016, but what if he ran in the future? Aren't they taking political risk or headline risk? And I remember looking at Jim Biden and saying, how are you guys getting away with this? Like, aren't you concerned? And he looked at me and he laughed a little bit and said, plausible deniability.
He said that out loud?
Yes, he said it directly to me, one-on-one in a cabana at the Peninsula Hotel after about a hour and a half, 2-hour meeting, with me asking out of concern, how are you guys doing this? Aren't you concerned that you're going to put your brother's, future presidential campaign at risk? The Chinese, the stuff that you guys have been doing already in 2015 and 2016 around the world. And I just can almost picture his face where he sort of chuckles and says, plausible deniability.
So he said, this is a man who's been drafting off his brother's political career for almost 50 years. He said to your face, essentially, we're lying about it.
Anyone watching this interview can look up what plausible deniability means, and the definition is very distinct.
Yeah, plausible deniability means that you know you're committing a crime and you're covering it up. That's what it means. And Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and his entire family are a criminal organization, just like the Clinton family, just like the Obama family. Okay? And it's just disgusting. And I did want to mention to you that Tucker Carlson, as you know from my previous, shows, I've talked about how he's just been gaining audience and gaining audience and gaining audience. Last time I said he set a record with 4.4 million viewers. This time he's got 5.3 million viewers. And Tucker Carlson tonight surpassed CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell with more than 5.3 million viewers, according to the Fox News press release. Over 5.3 million viewers, 1 million in the key demographic, and 670,000 in the 18 to 49 demo were counted by Nielsen Media Research, according to the press release. And so while big tech is trying to censor this and not let people know, we're not stupid. People know. They're listening to Tucker Carlson. They're watching this. Matter of fact, I also saw that on the Twitter, that Fox News posted the Bobulinski interview, and 2.3 million people watched it on Twitter. Okay? So it's just outrageous that they're not media. That the CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, the Washington Post, they're not media anymore. They're political activists. They're democratic, socialist, communist operatives. Hell, most of them are owned. Most of their parent companies are partially owned by the Chinese government, for God's sake. Okay? And so we got a serious problem in our hands because we're about to elect the president of the United States, and a good portion of this nation doesn't know that the guy is exactly what they accused Donald Trump of being. The lie was that Donald Trump was a Russian agent and he should be tried for treason. Remember that? Russia, Russia, Russia. Totally false. But remember, Saul Alinsky's rules. I've told you this a million times. They are always accusing you of what they're doing. Every time you see their lips move, if they call you a racist, they're a racist. If they say that you're stealing money, they're stealing money. It's just a fact. And so here they are with a presidential election, and they think we're too dumb to know that the guy that they want to elect president, just like the previous woman they want to elect president, is selling out America, selling out you and I. We ain't going to let it happen, folks. Joe Biden ain't never going to be president. And as I said in an earlier story you can find at wethepeopleconvention.org, the Biden family deserves to be in jail, not in the White House, and they got to be. But here's the other disturbing part of this whole cover-up. The FBI confirmed that it had Hunter Biden's laptop since last December 2019, and fails to say why they didn't mention it before the Trump impeachment, right? Here's a laptop that has documents on it that show that Joe Biden actually had these criminal activities with the Ukrainian government, that when he threatened the Ukrainian government that he would withhold $1 billion of your and my taxpayer dollars that was going to go as aid to Ukraine if they didn't fire the prosecutor who was investigating the company that was paying Hunter Biden $83,000 a month. That's on that laptop. The FBI did not tell us. How disgusting is that? How rotten to the core is the FBI of Jim Comey, Andy McCabe, and Strzok and Page, and now Christopher Wray and the rest of them? We're done. These people need to be gone, okay? And there's stories I talked about last week that Trump is talking about firing Wray from the FBI and Haspel, the woman from the CIA who doesn't want to declassify these coup documents, and then McAllister, the guy who's the head of the Defense Department, who's an Obama acolyte. And I tell you, that's not good enough. You can't just fire Christopher Wray. The FBI is corrupt to the core. And I'll go back to my friend Chris Farrell from Judicial Watch, who said months ago that we should get rid of the FBI. We should let the U.S. Marshal Service take over the FBI because it's so corrupt it can't be fixed. Now, I've said this to you before, and we did a press release before, but we have demanded a second special counsel and not just investigate Joe Biden. That's not the point. And so, we had put out a press release about a week and a half ago, and it said the Tea Party affiliated We the People Convention today called upon the United States Attorney General William Barr to appoint a new special counsel to investigate the ongoing deep state coup attempt against President Trump, the continuous illegal interference in political elections by U.S. intelligence agencies, the cast for influence scandals involving the Clinton Foundation, the Biden family, and the Obama administration, and the massive infiltration by anti-American Marxists and statists in our federal government and military. It is now crystal clear by the lack of action by AG William Barr and federal prosecutor John Durham, despite overwhelming publicly available evidence that proves serious wrongdoing by numerous actors, that it is impossible for any federal agency, including the misnamed Department of Justice, to investigate any other federal agency due to the depth and breadth of the corruption within those organizations and agencies, and in fact, our entire federal government. Therefore, our organization is demanding that AG William Barr immediately appoint a new special counsel to investigate all of these issues outside the influence of those federal agencies. Our recommendation for the new special counsel would be former United States Attorney Joseph DeGeneva. Now, I want you to call the White House and start demanding this. I have learned that the president has the authority to order AG Barr to appoint a special counsel. Not just for the Biden nonsense, okay? So I want you this week and coming up to start calling the White House at 202-456-1111 and demand a second special counsel. Demand it. I want you to write to whitehouse.gov. Go to whitehouse.gov/contacts and send notes to the president saying we've lost faith and trust, and he, the president, should have lost faith and trust in these government agencies, and we must have a special counsel. Ladies and gentlemen, it is high time, it is long past time that we appoint a special counsel who's going to do to the deep state, to the corrupt Democrat, Socialist, Communist Party, and all of their benefactors and people who've gotten money from our tax dollars because of them. We need to do to them what they did to Donald Trump for the last 4 years. We need to appoint someone like Joe DeGeneva who's going to go after them relentlessly and dog them to their deaths until they are driven out of our government. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot continue to function with the enemy within. We just can't do it. So that's your job for this week. And I'd ask you to do that if you can, okay? So now I got to wrap up the radio show. I sure appreciate you listening. I know this is the last show before the election. I know that you'll do your duty. You guys have never failed me. I'm so proud of you, and the story you will hear about the efforts you have made will be legend. History will remember what we've done here. History will remember for all time what we've done here and what we're going to do when this election is over, because we ain't going to sleep. We're going on offense. We're going to attack our enemies, and we're going to drive every communist, Marxist, socialist out of our country. Get the hell out. There's nothing, you can do nothing. You can't reason with them, as you'll see later in our podcast. They must either be deported or charged with sedition. There is no other answer. And this starts right now with this election. So get out the vote, help us with the NRA, and let's have a great day on Tuesday, November 3rd. And I'll talk to you guys, next week with the show next week. So I'm going to wrap up the radio show. The podcast continues for like another 30 minutes. You're listening to the We the People Convention News and Opinion radio show and podcast. And my name is Tom Zawistowski. The We the People Convention News and Opinion radio program is paid for by donors like you. You can donate to the We the People Convention and support our cause by going to wethepeopleconvention.org or by sending your check in any amount to We the People Convention, P.O. Box 6211, Akron, Ohio 44312. All right, we're going to get to some Ohio news here in the podcast because it's just been crazy here in Ohio, and mostly because of our dimwit Democrat Governor DeWine. I don't know. He's either insane or he's just scared out of his wits. But he's completely wrong. He makes no sense. But in his most recent press conference, the deaths are low, but DeWine sounds the COVID alarm. Governor Mike DeWine said on Tuesday that all Ohioans should be alarmed with the trajectory of the state's COVID numbers. DeWine reported 2,509 cases, 198 hospitalizations, 20 ICU visits, and 22 deaths for the week. Okay? DeWine said that lives are at stake and that he also worries about hospitals starting to fill up, claiming hospitalizations are at the highest point since the state started intervening with public health measures. But that's not true. Per the state's key metrics page, inpatient bed capacity is currently in Ohio at 70.8%. You want a little clue? Hospitals need to operate at about 75 to 80% to make any money. They're begging people to come in. But here's the key point. DeWine's worried about the hospitals filling up. Of the 70.8 inpatient bed capacity that's full, 3.8% are beds with COVID patients. Total bed occupancy is 64% with 9% COVID patients. Okay? Ventilator utilization represents 25% of the state's total capacity with only 4.2% used by COVID patients, Governor DeWine. He said that, the deaths, what did he say here? The deaths said that lives are at stake, and, claiming that they're at the highest point, since we started this. Yeah. Well, deaths peaked on April 28th, guys. Remember April 28th? Yeah, you can barely remember it. Months ago, just weeks into this, we had 64 deaths on one day. Now remember, I've told you this a long time ago, you won't remember this. Every day in Ohio, taking a 10-year average, I did the work to do this, 325 people die in Ohio every single day. Car accidents, heart attacks, cancer, whatever it is, okay? Drug overdoses, 325 people. Yeah. So the deaths, the most we ever had from COVID was 64. That isn't even a panic in my opinion, okay? But the deaths by date over the past 5 days are as followed. October 26th, 6. 25th, 11. 24th, 6. 23rd, 11. 21st, 26. And October 20th, 15. This isn't a panic of any kind, folks. And they're reporting cases, but cases aren't hospitalizations, aren't people who are sick or dying. The death rate in Ohio is 0.003% of the population. 99.9% of the people who get this don't die, and we won't let kids go to school. We won't let people play sports. We won't let you go see a Browns game or a Bengals game or an Ohio State game. Wow, what a moron. We're coming for you, Governor DeWine. We're coming for you right after this election. We're going to reelect President Trump, and then we're coming for you, Governor DeWine. And one of the guys who's leading that fight is our good friend John Becker. He's a House member. He's a guy I've known for a long time. He comes to the We the People convention all the time. He's been a strong supporter. And as you may or may not know, Becker filed a thing that's called a Private Citizens Affidavit on September 28th in Claremont County. And as the Ohio Star reported, the Private Citizens Affidavit alleged Ohio Governor Mike DeWine committed 7 felonies and 3 misdemeanors as a result of his managing the state's COVID response. 5 hours after receiving this Public Citizens Affidavit, which is a legal document. It's in the Ohio Revised Code, folks. It is legal to do this. The prosecutor, whose name is Ferris in Claremont County, stated, "I have reviewed the paperwork and do not find a basis for the filing of a complaint pursuant to the Private Citizens Affidavit." So, what did Becker do? He filed a writ of mandamus with the 12th Circuit Court of Appeals in an effort to get the court to force the prosecutor to at least investigate the claims which Becker spelled out by their Ohio Revised Code numbers, right? That DeWine broke the law. He canceled an election, for God's sake. He locked innocent people in their homes and put them under house arrest. He illegally closed businesses. That's what Becker's alleging. Yeah, well, So he files this in the 12th Appellate Court, and what has happened? Attorney General Dave Yost, the Ohio Attorney General, sticks his nose in this and tries to embarrass and shame John Becker. The writ of mandamus influenced Yost to file his brief, saying the action warrants no expenditure of law enforcement resources. Yost called for Becker to be sanctioned with court fees and forced to spend a day observing court cases to get a better understanding of how frivolous filings are a drain on the judicial system. Yeah, the governor of our state has committed 7 felonies, and you're calling him out for it as a member of the Ohio House of Representatives is a frivolous act when no one has even investigated the charges. That's our Attorney General. What a POS Dave Yost is, right? What a clown. So to John Becker's credit, he filed a motion on Monday asking for Yost to be sanctioned, demanding his resignation and calling his brief an attempt to harass, intimidate, and bully people of Ohio. So guess what? When this election is over, you can file the same kind of filing in your county that Becker filed, and we're going to file these in every county, and we're going to demand that DeWine be held accountable. So stay tuned, because Dave Yost, Mike DeWine, nobody is going to intimidate we the people. We will not be intimidated. You will not rule over us. You will do what we say. We don't do what you say. That's not how it works in our representative republic. Understand? You're going to understand, I promise you. And for those who don't understand, perhaps this will be your fate. Other big news here. 2 householder associates taking plea deals in the HB6 corruption case. 2 of the 5 people charged in the federal corruption scandal involving former Ohio House Speaker Larry Householder were set to finalize plea deals with prosecutors Thursday. Both plan to plead guilty to a single count of racketeer influence and corrupt organizations, or RICO, conspiracies. Felonies that carry potential sentences of up to 20 years in jail and fines up to $250,000, plus potential additional restitution and forfeiture, according to court documents. Ultimate sentencing decisions will be made by the court on a later date. Bottom line is, they've turned state's evidence, okay? And what they're doing is they're going to lay out for the FBI what Householder did, what Borges did, and what a whole bunch of other people did, Democrats and Republicans, to pass that House Bill 6, which was a bailout of the First Energy nuclear power plants. They're going to find out that they don't just get to do what they want either, that we have courts that will hold them accountable, right? So I thought I'd bring you up to date on that, because I got news for you. These guys didn't do a plea deal for nothing. They didn't get a plea deal for nothing. They had to give something up. And what they gave up is going to implicate a whole bunch of other people. So just know that's about to happen, okay? And then, we'll keep you posted as we go forward. All right, we're going to take another break here for just a minute, and then we'll come back with some more stories on the podcast. You're listening to the We the People Convention News and Opinion radio show and podcast, and my name's Tom Zawistowski.
This is Jordan Seculo with the American Center for Law and Justice. At the ACLJ, we are committed to fighting the deep state and protecting freedom, the right to life, religious liberty, and fighting for the Constitution. The ACLJ has experienced tremendous success in litigating cases at all levels of the judiciary, from the federal district court level to the Supreme Court of the United States. We have offices in Washington, D.C., Jerusalem, and all around the world. You can find out more about the ACLJ and join us by visiting aclj.org.
All right, so now we're going to go back and talk a little bit more about the national scene and the election, because I've told you guys, if you go to the website and read the article, why mail-in ballots will not affect this election and why we won't have to wait weeks, to find out who won. Well, here's some information I'm going to give you about what's going on in that dynamic, so you can see what the odds are of that not happening, okay? So the first story I'm just outraged over, and I'm hopeful that it will get overturned. I put out a story that said no signature check or postmark required to vote in PA. Basically, the PA Supreme Court legalized absentee ballot fraud with 2 insane rulings. Now, I had told you before that John Roberts, the the rhino, George Bush, non-Republican, who's the Supreme Court's Chief Justice, he sided 4-4 in a case that basically the PA Democrat-controlled Supreme Court said that in Pennsylvania, they can accept ballots up to 3 days after the election, meaning until Friday, but the ballots didn't need to have a postmark. They could just show up. Oh, I found 10,000 ballots in the trunk of my car, and they have to be counted. And John Roberts voted to uphold that. Now, they then made 2 more rulings that are equally as insane. Equally insane. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court on Friday ruled unanimously to prohibit counties from rejecting mail-in ballots because a signature on the ballot may not match the one on the voter's registration form. So get this. They just decided that while you have to sign your absentee ballot, and while if you vote in person in Pennsylvania, you have to show your driver's license, and they look at your signature, and they look at the one in the book, and they compare them, yeah, this court said that you don't have to do that. That the signatures not only do you not have to do that, they are not allowed to compare the signatures to reject ballots. The justices disagreed, arguing that the election code on mail-in ballots only requires a voter's signature on the ballot envelope, but not a matching signature. What? So what's the point of having a signature? Anybody could sign it, right? The court ruled that, yeah, you have to sign the ballot, the envelope, but that doesn't mean it has to match the signature of the person who's supposed to be voting. Only a damn Democrat or John Roberts could think that makes sense. The Senate Majority Leader for the Republicans, Jake Corman in Pennsylvania, accused the judge of undermining election integrity, arguing that her interpretation amounts to signatures required on the mail-in ballots being meaningless. Duh, yeah. People voting in person are now being held to a higher standard than those with who mail in their ballots. That's not equal justice under the law. It shouldn't have been upheld. And yet they did that. And then they went one step further. These people, I mean, again, what I said, the PA Supreme Court basically voted to legalize absentee ballot voter fraud. Because then what they did is they told the Trump campaign that you aren't allowed to have poll watchers in what they call satellite locations. Satellite locations is where the Democrats bring people together and they basically harvest ballots and bundle and give food and money for ballots, okay? That's how stupid this is. But the Supreme Court ruled on Friday that while they can't stop it before the election, they told the PA Supreme Court that you've got to set aside, that the boards of elections in PA have to set aside the ballots that the signatures haven't been checked, so that if after the election they rule that they have to match, they can count or discount those ballots. So this fight is not over, okay? And so the left thinks that PA is their firewall. See, and this is how stupid they are. And I've told you this, and this is why we're beating them like a drum, okay? We're just beating their brains out. And we're going to win Pennsylvania even despite this cheating. But they think that's their firewall. So why? Because in 2016, we had to wait till 3 o'clock in the morning before they would admit they couldn't cheat enough to steal the election from Trump, right? So now in their stupid, warped, minds, their ignorant heads, they think they're running the same election. They think that if they can just win Pennsylvania, then they can stop Trump. It's not true. I've shown you that. Go look at We the People Convention website. Trump can lose Pennsylvania and Michigan and still won. And guess what? He ain't going to lose either one of them. He's not going to lose either one of them. And here's another reason he's not going to lose either one of them, okay? Because this is what's going on in Philadelphia right now. This is why they're not going to win Pennsylvania.
Are creating traffic jams in certain parking lots. We also saw people stealing dozens of TVs from a Walmart earlier this evening. There's been looting at a Target, a Foot Locker, a Dollar General. And again, we are seeing that heavy police presence that Philadelphia PD promised they would have tonight. But again, not stopping these looters who are kind of working in these small groups and hitting up these stores as soon as they see the cops move away. Now, this comes hours after Walter Wallace Jr.'s family pleaded with the public this evening not to loot or commit violence. Listen to this.
I ain't got time to loot and burn up and destroy where I live. It's uncalled for. It really is. You know what I mean? And the people who's doing that is sending a bad they not helping me and my family. They showing disrespect, and they making it look like we animals and we's not.
Now, protests erupted in Philadelphia Monday night following the fatal shooting of Wallace. Hundreds of people took to the streets, some looting businesses and setting vehicles on fire. Others in the crowd were throwing rocks and bricks at police. More than 90 people were arrested and at least 30 officers injured in all of this, including one female officer who was hit by a truck. Now, the outrage sparked by this video here of police shooting Wallace Jr. in a West Philadelphia neighborhood. Officers say they responded to the area on reports of an armed man. They found Wallace walking around with a knife. They say they ordered him to drop the weapon, but he continued moving towards those officers. And then each of those two officers fired at him 7 different times. Wallace was pronounced dead at a hospital. His father told the Philadelphia Inquirer that his son was on medication. He'd been struggling with some mental health issues. And protesters and the family have been demanding answers as to why a non-lethal force like a taser wasn't used instead.
So there you have it. That's what America doesn't want. We don't want riots in our cities. And we don't want thousands of people raiding Targets and Bed Bath & Beyond stores miles away from where the shooting took place, because those aren't protests. Those are just riots. And guess what? We also found out that the police, the Philadelphia Police Department, they were told to stand down. They were told not to arrest people. So guess what? It's going to tamp down voting in Philadelphia. This rioting is going to stop voting. Matter of fact, I had already heard this week that the vote in urban areas, particularly the black vote, is being suppressed by as much as 10%. Even from the low Hillary Clinton vote. The vote for Hillary Clinton in most urban areas was about 62%. It was 75% in Trump areas, okay? And I had heard that Philadelphia was really worried because they were already down 10% from the vote Hillary got in early voting. Now, all these suburban housewives that people say hate Trump and that, you think they're voting for that? You think when they rob their Target store, when they burn their Target store, that those white women are going to vote for that? Ain't happening, folks. Ain't happening. So just understand what's going on here. Learn the broader picture. And then there was a big statement by Justice Kavanagh. He said, after they rejected the court rejected a Democratic attempt to allow mail-in votes postmarked by Election Day to be received up to 6 days after the elections in Wisconsin, Kavanaugh also suggested that state courts may not have the last word in interpreting state election rules. Under the U.S. Constitution, the state courts do not have a blank check to rewrite state election law for federal elections. Kavanaugh wrote in a footnote of his concurring opinion on that case in Wisconsin. Kavanaugh's inaugural language overall mirrors President Trump's rhetoric about calling a winner on election night. So basically what Kavanaugh is saying is, in a federal election, the legislature's rules are what matter. The court, unlike what the Supreme Court did in Florida, okay, back when Bush was running, where they had to decide which votes counted and didn't count and declare who won the state and who won the presidency, state courts can't do that. And Justice Kavanaugh just made that clear. That's going to make it a lot less nuts on election day, okay? And so then here's another story that I thought was very important. Election experts doubt Supreme Court decides White House race, okay? The 2020 presidential election probably won't end up in the sort of nightmare scenario where a legal challenge or recount winds up at the Supreme Court and the justices decide who wins the White House. Let's put the chances of that happening at about 5.2%, said Ben Ginsberg, the prominent election lawyer who led the George W. Bush campaign legal strategy during the disputed Florida recount 2000, has quipped in pre-election webinars. Other election law experts agree that a Supreme Court case to determine the 2020 election would first need to meet several unlikely conditions. There would have to be a narrow electoral college count nationwide, and with a legal challenge about voting in one or more states that could determine the outcome. And those challenges would depend on federal law, not just state law, as Kavanaugh just said. As I've told you, Donald Trump is going to win the Electoral College so big, it ain't going to matter. There aren't states that are going to be able to file lawsuits. It's not going to happen. And if it does happen, we've got now a very important tool. Justice Amy Coney Barrett was, appointed to the Supreme Court. On Monday, she was, sworn in. On Tuesday, she went to work. This is critical. And I posted a very important story. And I'm asking all of you to go watch this video of the Trump swearing in speech and Amy Coney Barrett's statements. This is really important. And I posted with that video, so just go to wethepeopleconvention.org, look for the Justice Amy Coney Barrett picture, okay? And then I posted an article from the Cornell Law Review. This article explains that we just got what we've most been wanting and fighting for. Amy Coney Barrett's appointment ends the decades of judicial activism. It ends the decades of the Supreme Court making law like abortion and gay marriage and Obamacare being legal when it clearly was not. Amy Coney Barrett is the kryptonite to these creep judges who've been indoctrinated into the idea that our Constitution is a living document that must be brought up to the times. You know why that isn't right? Because the court, the Supreme Court, which is not elected but appointed, should be the weakest of the three branches. And it's not their job to fix the mistakes of Congress. It's not their job to be Congress. It's their job to look at what Congress does and say, does this fit with what the founders said? If yes, it's legal. If no, it goes back to Congress to decide. There is no gay marriage. There is no right to abortion. Those were all lies. They were made out of whole cloth by activist judges. You cannot appreciate until you read this article how important this is, because it will bring into balance the form of government our founders so brilliantly put together with three co-equal branches to balance it out. And it's going to force Congress to have to make laws, and that's good because they are answerable to us. See what I'm saying? And that's what the Dems have been doing. They couldn't win in Congress. They couldn't convince you to vote for this stuff that, you could pick your sex, that gender is fluid. And they were going to the courts to make these decisions. That has to stop because it destroys federalism. It destroys the representation of the people. Abortion isn't a federal issue. It's a state's issue. We in Ohio voted against it. It should be illegal here. If you want it legal in your state, go vote for it. Do you see what I'm saying, how important this is? We have just crossed the Rubicon, friends. We have just moved out of the wilderness back into the light towards the founding of our Constitution. And I want you to understand it and be proud of what you're doing. That's what we're fighting for. You combine that with what the president's doing with canceling the indoctrination, in our government, in our military, in our schools, in our corporations, with this critical race theory and the leftist Marxist garbage. And we are going to become America again. It's joyous. Praise God. Understand how big a step we've just taken. And then you'll understand why I'm going to ask of you to do the things that we're going to do following this up. Okay? All right, we're going to take another quick break, and then we'll be back for our final segment. You're listening to the We the People Convention news and opinion radio show and podcast, and my name is Tom Zawistowski.
Did you know that the Right to Life Action Coalition of Ohio is the largest statewide life group in the state? Are you tired of the compromised approach to pro-life legislation that has been the status quo for far too long? Since 2017, the efforts of the Right to Life Action Coalition of Ohio has changed that approach, closing loopholes and making pro-life laws enforceable. Visit rtlaohio.org or call 440-668-4049 for details.
All right, we're back for our final segment. And so we're going to get into some heavy duty stuff. And I know that was pretty heavy the last segment, but folks, there's monumental things happening. And fortunately, they're happening the way we want them to happen. So this week, I talked to you guys before about, that the Senate was going to bring in the tech CEOs, Zuckerberg from Facebook and Dorsey from Twitter and whatever the guy's name, the Indian guy from Google, right? And I told you, the problem with this is it was political. It wasn't legal. It wasn't about, policy. It was about politics. So I'm a little disgusted because they're talking a great game, but they're not doing what needs to be done. They're not protecting you and I, the American people. They're selling us out, and they all have taken huge. Nobody bribes more congressmen than the big tech companies. Nobody. They've all gotten money. And they've not reined them in because they've gotten money. And they've ruined our lives. They've censored us. They've kept us from using these tools that other people have because our government let them. But at least some of our people stood up, got some sound clips and stuff. So here's one you might have already heard, but I want to play it because it's really, talks right to the point. Here's Ted Cruz going after Dorsey from Twitter.
You forced a Politico reporter to take down his post about the New York Post as well. Is that correct?
Within that 24-hour period, yes. But we, as the policy has changed, anyone can tweet the
So Twitter takes the view you can censor the New York Post, you can censor Politico, presumably you can censor the New York Times or any other media outlet. Mr. Dorsey, who the hell elected you and put you in charge of what the media are allowed to report and what the American people are allowed to hear? And why do you persist in behaving as a Democratic super PAC, silencing views to the contrary of your political beliefs?
Let's give Mr. Dorsey a few seconds to answer that.
Well, we're not doing that. And this is why I opened this hearing with calls for more transparency.
Yeah. Jack Dorsey looking like Charles Manson, right? You want a guy that looks like that, who looks like a total crackhead, deciding your freedom? But I'll answer Senator Cruz's question. Who the hell elected you to do this? Yeah, Senator Cruz, you did. And so did, Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell and all the senators who've given them the power that no other company has ever had in the history of America. And in Section 230, which is the key section we're talking about, didn't even come up for 2 hours into the hearing, okay? For 2 hours. And in Section 230, it literally says that they can do things to you and I even if they're against the U.S. Constitution. Not making this up. Go look at Section 230. So there was another take on the hearings that came from Dan Crenshaw. And Dan Crenshaw said the biggest takeaway from the big tech hearing, Jack Dorsey is a partisan and a hypocrite. And number two, there are no liberals left in the Democratic Party. Not a single Democratic senator defended free speech or freedom of the press today. That should terrify all Americans. Yeah, so here's what one of the senators from the Democratic senator, it was disgusting. It was disgusting. Massachusetts Senator Edward Markey, meanwhile, said the effort feeds a false narrative about anti-conservative bias and to intimidate big tech so it will stand idly by in the final days of the election. The issue today is not that the companies are taking too many posts down, he added. The issue today is the companies are leaving too many posts up. That's what the Democrat, communist, socialists want. They want to silence you. They want big tech that is like China has. Okay? That's the problem. And we got to fix it. But these clowns in Congress aren't even close to fixing it. We talked last week about the Trump administration, meaning the DOJ, and 11 states launched an antitrust lawsuit against search behemoth Google. Okay? Well, I told you last week, antitrust is not the way to go. We are going to move. I'm going to ask you to help me move to basically say, you must nationalize social media. We need to nationalize it, meaning it needs to become like the gas company or the electric company. It can't operate. If you want, and I'm begging you, go to Netflix, borrow someone's account, go to your computer or on your TV and go to Netflix and watch The Social Dilemma. This is an important documentary. It explains to you that this just isn't about censorship. It's about the way that big tech and social media are set up right now is destructive to humanity. Literally, it makes you not human. It's dehumanizing. It can't exist in its form. It cannot exist where we, the customer, are your product. I said last week, they had a part in that movie, The Social Dilemma. They had a little screen that said, only 2 industries call their customers users: drug industry and big tech, social media. That's what's wrong with it. Just like drugs are destructive to humanity, what they're doing by putting us in silos, manipulating our thoughts and what we see, tearing us apart, pitting us against each other in a way we can never get out, hiding the truth from us. We can't allow this. We need this to be like the gas company or the electric company or the water company. I would gladly pay $40 a month to be able to send you emails that you actually get and have you send emails back to me. And if you don't want to get my emails, you can decide, but no company decides. I should be able to post on my social media pictures of our family birthday party and not have some creep doing facial recognition on our children and building a database of who they're with and selling it. The only way we're going to have privacy into the 21st century, which is the key issue for freedom. You got to have privacy and free expression to have freedom and liberty. And that's what this show is about, defending our freedom, liberty, and prosperity. The data should be ours. Your pictures stay on your hard drive. They don't go into the cloud and get sold and shared and all that nonsense. That can be done. We're going to demand that they nationalize social media in America and it become a public utility. That's going to be a big ask, but we got to do it. And we got to do it because there's people out there that are behind social media that you should be concerned about. The Trump resistance has plans for a mass mobilization after the election to shut down the country if Biden doesn't win. And I know you've heard some of this, but I want to talk a little bit about it. Riot and protest instigators plan to make sure Trump leaves the White House by any means necessary after the November 3rd election, according to website posts from the group Shut Down DC. We're making plans to be in the streets before the polls even close, ready to adapt and respond to whatever comes our way, the group says on its website currently. The group linked to protests at homes of Trump administration officials tells its DC supporters to come to Black Lives Matter Plaza on election night to create serious disruption if Trump really tries to steal this election. In whose opinion, you clowns? Okay? Black Lives Matter Plaza is a site of repeated anti-Trump summer rioting and defacement of historic St. John's Church 1 block away from the White House. On the page, Shutdown DC sketches out its plans for election night immediately following. On November 4th through the 7th, the group says it plans to do whatever it takes to make sure that Trump, steps down. Then on November 8th through the 11th, the group plans to meet members of Congress returning to Washington for the lame duck session. If Trump is trying to launch a coup, that's no time for business as usual. We will meet them at the train station or the airports, or if they drive into town, we can meet them at their homes. That's what they're planning, okay? But it's not going to happen, folks, because these clowns, as Trump said, he can squash them in 20 minutes. They're no match for our military. They're no match for our police if you just have the police absolutely, engaging with these idiots, okay? But remember, when you're fighting for this election, when you're fighting for what I just said we're fighting for by getting Coney Barrett to be a Supreme Court justice and trying to rein in big tech and get a special prosecutor, we're fighting against this. Let me play this video from back during the summer so you don't forget it. Yeah, death to America. That's what they're shouting. Death to America. You don't compromise with people who say death to America. You kill them or you put them in prison. And that's where this is going, folks. And whether we like it or not, that's what we've got to do. Okay? I'm not afraid of these people. You shouldn't be afraid of these people. These people are just stooges. They're college-educated, indoctrinated communists. We're going to crush them. I promise you. We're going to crush them, and they're going to be in the dustbin of history. Okay? And so I'm going to tell you a couple good stories now to end the show. I like to do it on an upbeat. So let's talk about a couple things that are pretty cool. Okay? One is I finally have gotten a new search tool on our website. And I'm so excited because our website has gotten so big now that I can't even find stuff. So if you go to the main page and you click on the search button, the little eyeglass at the top, you can put in something like DeWine, and then it'll pull up every article that mentions DeWine on our whole website. I've been looking for this forever, okay, forever. So, if you click on the little monocle, the eyeglass, the magnifying glass, and type AG Barr, it'll give you every story that I've written and posted about AG Barr. If you put things on there about like Dr. Atlas, it'll show you that information, okay? It's just absolutely awesome. And I'm so glad to have that. So I want you to go to the website, wethepeopleconvention.org, and do that. You use that tool because it'll help you find things. All right. So that's good news. And the last thing I want to tell you about is something that, again, you just haven't heard this. You just haven't heard it, but it's important because I keep telling you we're winning. I keep showing you how we're winning, right? And we are winning. And so here's a story. GOP bets on voter enthusiasm, ground game advantage, and late fundraising surge to win the election. With a tight race in battleground states nationwide on Election Day fast approaching, Republicans are banking on voter enthusiasm, a record 150 million voter contacts through door-to-door knocks, phone calls, and then a $26 million fundraising surge following Thursday's presidential debate to win the election. Polling by Justin News with Scott Rasmussen from early this month found Donald Trump voters 20% more likely than Joe Biden voters to be excited about their respective candidate. The poll found that 30% of Biden voters see him as the lesser of two evils. That's important. Republican Party officials announced Friday that Trump Victory, the joint ground game initiative of the Republican National Committee and Trump 2020 campaign, surpassed the voter contact record previously set by former President Obama's re-election campaign in 2020 and nearly doubles the 71 million total voter contacts the group made in 2016. So the Trump campaign has reached 150 million voters. There's only like 240 million adult voters in the country. Unbelievable. And that doubles what Obama did. Okay? Obama's, Trump Victory was planning to spend nearly $300 million by the end of the 2020 cycle on its overall voter contact program, including field data and digital efforts. Okay? While an imperfect predictive measure earlier this year, Trump defeated Biden in the 2020 primary vote turnout for key swing states like Ohio and Pennsylvania, even after Biden had essentially sewn up his Democratic Party's nomination. Citing the strong turnout for the Trump primaries, his key campaign sees an enthusiasm and base intensity gap favorable for the president. So even in the primaries, more people turned out to vote for Trump when there was nobody running against Trump than they did for Biden. Okay? Just the News reported in August that Pennsylvania voter registration data shows that Republicans are gaining voters at 5 times the rate of Democrats. Republicans also cut into Democratic voter registration numbers in key states like Florida and Arizona. Earlier this month, Republicans cut Democratic advantage in Florida voter registrations by more than half since the 2016 election. The difference is now 134,000 registered voters compared to 327,000 advantage Democrats had 4 years ago when President Trump won the swing state over Democrat Hillary Clinton by just 1.2 percentage points. This is very important because Donald Trump won all those states last time, and now we have more Trump voters. The RNC and Trump campaign said Friday that their authorized joint fundraising committee announced a record-breaking $26 million haul around Thursday's final presidential debate. The committee said this was the re-election effort's largest digital fundraising day ever, raising 30% more and reactivating 20% more past donors than previous debates. Wow. That is awesome. How can he lose? How can Trump lose? And the answer is he can't. Because we're not going to let him. Because you and I are going to close the deal. We're going to close the deal. Okay? But I want to share that with you because this didn't just happen. There's a lot of us. There's you and I. We worked hard and we're going to get the benefit of our work. We're not only better than they are, we work harder and we're smarter. The left is just a joke. These people are going to get the biggest middle finger ever given by the American people to the elites, the media, the Hollywood types, and the commies. We're going to give them the middle finger and say, screw you. We're not fooled by your stupidity. We're not going to give up our rights. We're not going to give up our country. We're not going to become communists or socialists. We're going to fight you, and we're going to do whatever it takes to defeat you. Whatever it takes. Mark it down. I promise you. You are no match for the American people. No one in the world has ever been a match for the American people because you can't defeat freedom and liberty, and you can't defeat a belief in God and the values like we have. That's what makes America great. You guys are clowns. You aren't great. You've failed all over the place. We know what works. We aren't going to get rid of what works. We're going to preserve it and protect it. And I'm telling you, when we get done, when Donald Trump is done, you're going to see an America that we haven't seen in decades. You're going to see the rule of law. You're going to see all this strife that is made up, that is cooked up, all this racial nonsense that is literally that nonsense. We're not racist. We're past that, man. We judge people on the content of their character. Otherwise, you wouldn't be seeing all these African Americans on football teams and basketball teams and in movies and on TV commercials. Man, if you're judged by the number of gays on TV commercials, you'd think half the population was gay. Yeah, we're racist, homophobic, xenophobic, whatever alphabet soup you want to throw. Yet everyone in the world wants to come here. We're not that stupid. Only someone who goes to college can be that stupid. So let's get it done, right? Can't talk to you anymore until after Election Day. I believe in you. I trust you. I know we had a great plan. I know we've executed. I know it's working, and I expect to win. Victory is the only option. There will be no losing. Let's get it done. Turn out that vote on Election Day. I want just driving people to the polls on Election Day so we crush the Democrat, communists, socialists, whatever they are. Crush them. And then we'll go on offense for real. Okay? All right. We're going to wrap up the show. You've been listening to the We the People Convention News and Opinion podcast and radio show. Please tell other people about the podcast and radio show. Please send me your comments at info@WeThePeopleConvention. And please come back and join us next week, because next week we're hopefully going to be talking about a joyous election win and what we're going to do going forward. It's going to be a great show next week. Be sure to join me. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll see you then.